So check it out. I've really made some videos just directly applying my meta theory here for a while. So, and I just thought of a really fantastic example. I was thinking about just like different ways, like how you can apply the meta theory to making plans, and like how I apply it to make the plans I make. Because I've had upon like going about this, getting this out there, like I've been working with like 20 different plans all at once, and it's been kind of fun, but also just yeah, this has not been fun. But like regardless, I've been taking that logic and it's like kind of when you get into this way of thinking, you just kind of start to see the parallels of things, right? And so like I'm thinking about like the way I kind of went about this was like just lots of different plans, and like as soon as one plan doesn't seem like it's going to work, I'll jump to this other plan, and as soon as that one doesn't, like I've got this other plan, I'm kind of jumping on this, and so like I'm keeping to like my authentic goal here of just kind of getting these out there in the most ethical, best way that I can muster, right? But like, because I'm also being kind to myself. Like I think that's kind of missed in some of this. Like, it's kind of gotta be kind to myself. But regardless, I get off topic. Minute and a half in, I can't even just like too ADHD. But I was thinking about like the way what I've kind of approached this with plans and how that parallels to other things, and like I kind of came up with the basketball. So I was thinking, let's apply this meta theory to basketball, and we could apply it to the physics of basketball. I think that'd be interesting. But I was thinking more of like how you approach a play and as a team, and also like why communication is so important. Because that's essentially often the approach with basketball. Is like you have like relative to what the defense is like kind of defense going on, you're going to go in with a different offensive mindset. If the defense is playing a zone, then maybe you'll go in with this type of play. If they're playing man to man, then maybe you go into this different play, this type of play. And then there's different kinds of man to man, different zones, and so like you go in with a relative plan, and that's the origin of entropy for like what you're going to do on the basketball court. And so like the point guard is often the origin of entropy for that origin of entropy, right? If you see what I mean. Point guard is kind of dictating a lot of the direction of things. And so the point guard is the origin of entropy for the origin of entropy. But like, and then you can trace it back like, oh, and that's coming from the coach, right? If we do that. But from that play, we're going to call a play, right? That's the origin of entropy for what can happen. Now, relative to what the defense does, there's entropy there, right? So the defense is going to do this thing that we're trying to make out. We might not make it out quite. And so, like, the really good play callers, the really good people at basketball, people that are really good at basketball are anticipating the entropy or anticipating all of those little things they can't quite discern. They're just making it out really quick and then making decisions based off that. And so, like, when you go into basketball and you go in with a set play, sometimes those set plays work, right? Like, you do this, you do it in this order, that will work, regardless of what the defense does, kind of thing. But pretty often, that's where, like, it's good to be creative in basketball, right? So, like, relative to what the defense is doing and what the entropy on the court is, and you read that entropy, then you're going to do this or that. And so, within that, like often in basketball, there's this play that we're going to run, but then there's all these other little options. And you can see this in football too, right? Big part of football. Like you see all these options off of that play. So sometimes a play might be set up to set up those options to have. And then from that new origin of entropy, you have this spectrum of decisions to be made off of that. Now, like over time, we could, like, if you run the same plays over and over again, like the collective's going to see that. And so, like, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again, expect it to work, right? Because they're going to kind of expect that. And so that's more of like where it comes to that individual side of like making those different choices. Like, am I going to do this or am I going to do that? And so you have this play, but then based off of that play, you have all of these other plays that could be made. And so we have this origin of entropy, this play that goes up and can create the spectrum for different options we have. And then based on the option we choose, there's a new origin of entropy, a new set of spectrums of options we can have. And relative to the rule consequential rule, what relative to the collective view of what thing is going on, that individual is going to have to make their individual choices in response to that. But there is always just that void. Like you just don't quite know what somebody's going to do. You can never quite know for sure what some defense is going to do, what the offense is going to do. You don't know if that person is going to make that shot. Now, we can kind of see through the void a little bit with statistics, right? Like Steph Curry's going to make that shot, that crazy three-pointer, way more often than others. And so that's where we start to dictate some of those choices and those potential spectrum of choices we could make off of kind of data and statistics, right? So it's pretty good. Kind of a parallel, just kind of how I see my decision making and not decision making, but my planning. Kind of how I went about this. It's very similar to like how you might play basketball, right? I'm pretty meh at basketball. I'm all right. But like, I thought that was interesting. Is there anything else to that? What am I missing? I don't know. I guess how would we apply this to more general concept of the team? How would we apply this to a general concept of team? And that's where we get into that. And I talked about communication earlier. Like if we talk about that kind of collective view on it, that's where like communication's huge, right? Because with all of those different decisions being made, communication helps people stay onto kind of what the origin of entropy, like so that's where like we recognize what the origin of entropy is. So without that communication, the entropy gets out of control. The communication on the court is what helps us manage that entropy and doesn't let the entropy get out of control. We can stay kind of in tune with each other. So there's no communication, then it's more of just people are trying to read all of these things. Like we're trying to read all of this entropy on the court all at once, and that's just really difficult. It's like there's 9 other players on that court trying to like understand all the moves they're making, what they're going to do. Like it's too much entropy. So we have communication to help manage that entropy, and so it doesn't get out of control. And then that allows us to more clearly and accurately see what the spectrum of decisions to be made could be. Not should be. Because it's kind of like in basketball. Like you could say, oh, you should do this and then this will work. But that doesn't really work because you don't know what the defense is going to do. There's a void there. So it's important to see what you can do rather than what you should do. Right? All right. It's pretty good. Have a good day.